Photo Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Grace Costa, a commercial photographer of over 2 decades, a photo-based artist and a photography mentor. This podcast opens up a secret diary about the world of the photography industry. We'll bring you inspiring interviews with industry professionals, as well as stories and tips to help you propel through your photography journey, whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro. Thanks for joining me today. Now let's open the latest diary. Hi friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here today because we are going to talk about personal projects. And I know so many of you will enjoy this episode because I get this question a lot. How do I create personal projects? What do I do with them? How do I start a fine art portfolio and things like that? So this is the episode for you. First of all, what is a personal project? Well, basically, it's non-commissioned work you create for the purpose of creative exploration. It can be a body of work, such as a series, or it can be a single image. And what would be the purpose of doing a personal project, especially when you are already busy running your photography business? Well, it allows you to practice new techniques. So if there's a style you want to try out, you have the opportunity to do it through a personal project where you don't have the pressure of being paid by a client or working on client's timeline. You can do this in your own time. It helps you explore ideas. So for me, a personal project I did in the past, which helped me explore a new idea, was I did a series of photograms of flowers. And I was really interested in alternative processes back then. And I had an opportunity to work in a darkroom called Photo Access in Canberra. And that just helped me play around with the old-fashioned style of making images without the camera through the darkroom, and it was called photograms. So that gives you a good example of how to explore new ideas. The purpose can also be to collaborate with somebody that you want to collaborate with. So for me, I did a personal project of horse portraits, and I collaborated with a local florist who made their headdress that the horses wore. She made them from scratch. They were all individually wired in, and this was a collaboration. So there was no payment exchange, but they did get a print with every headdress that they made. You know, they got artworks in return. So that's another option. A really good purpose for doing personal projects is to build your portfolio. So if you intend to start a new niche in photography or a new area, but you don't have the work in your portfolio, doing it through a personal project is a great way to build those images that you can start putting on your socials, and you can share them on your website as well. An example of this for me was a Facebook group was started around 2012, and it was called 52 Portraits. And the intention of that group was to create personal projects with the parameter of 52 portraits in 52 weeks. Now, the portraits didn't have to be good, they just had to be done. And I loved that. And that allowed me to create images for my creative portrait portfolio, which I wasn't doing in my day-to-day work. I was a commercial photographer back then, and I was doing work for another company. So I never had the opportunity to create really creative stuff using my imagination. And this 52 portrait project was the perfect gateway for me to explore portraiture in a creative way. I could do it however I wanted. And the way I used it was I thought about what sort of gaps in my skill set can I focus on with this project. So I intended to use a lot of studio lighting for my portraiture so that I could practice different lighting techniques that I didn't have the opportunity to do on the job. So that gives you an example of how a personal project can help you push your boundaries, try new things, and build your portfolio in return. So at the end of that year, I could select some of the really good portraits and put them on my website And also I ended up entering some of them in competitions as well. So how do you build a personal project series? Well, you could start by writing about a theme that you're passionate about, writing about the idea, getting it out all on paper. You could do some sketches in your book, which all my personal projects and my ideas start with sketches. As basic as the sketch is, it just allows me to get the idea out of my head and onto the page so that I can plan the composition and plan the things that I'm going to need to bring this image to life. You next need to set aside some time. This is the biggest thing photographers tell me, is that they don't have time for personal projects. They've got all these ideas floating around in their head, but they don't have the time. Well, the time isn't there unless you make time for it. I'm sorry to say, you have to decide that you want to create this idea and then find some time in your calendar, whether it be on a weekend, to create this idea and bring it to life. Another useful thing to help you get this personal project out there and done is set a deadline or a due date. And this has always helped me in the past. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep procrastinating and saying, oh, I'll do it next weekend. I'll definitely do it the weekend after next, or I'll definitely do it by March. Well, you've got to set a deadline. You've got to commit to it to make it happen. Otherwise, it stays an idea floating around in your head. So another thing you could do to help make it happen is find an accountability buddy. So it doesn't even have to be another photographer, although it would benefit you if it was another photographer. You could do the project together, say, like, you don't have to physically be in the same room together, but say me and Olivia, I say, all right, we're going to do a personal project. The due date is 31st of March. You do yours, I do mine. And halfway through, we're going to check each other's work, check in with each other and see where we're at, bounce ideas, show each other what we've done, that sort of thing. So you can have an accountability buddy in that way, or it can be a friend who's not a photographer and just tell them your intention, tell them the deadline, and ask them to check on you every week or every fortnight. So what do you do with the personal project? You could enter your images or image in photo competitions. There are so many competitions out there, and I have an episode already recorded that shows you, well, in the show notes, you can go in there and have a look at the show notes. There's a list of photographic competitions worth entering, so go and check that out. You could get your work published. So if you're really proud of your personal project, Frankie Magazine would be the perfect place to get your work published. They often have competitions as well for artists, so look out for those. Just look through Frankie Magazine and see that your theme or your project aligns with the readership and the style of the magazine you're pitching to. How about printing your work? You know, a lot of the time for my personal projects, I've just wanted to do them just so I can have artwork in my house. So you can, you know, get them done with a fine art printer, get them framed up. You could sell them online through online galleries or through stock libraries. Even think about Society 6. If you've got some really cool images that you created from your personal project and you want to sell them, you think that they would be very saleable, why not check out Society 6? You can not only get the images sold as prints, but they can sell them as phone cases, cushion covers, tote bags, notebook covers, iPad covers, like the list goes on. And that's a really cool end result for your images. Or you could, of course, if you are really serious about your project, put it in an exhibition, either a group show where it fits the theme of the group show, or have a solo exhibition like I have done in the past. So the personal projects that I've done that have made a huge impact on my career as an artist, particularly one of them launched me as an artist in Canberra, but I'll take you through the ones that have made the most impact for me. The first major personal project I did was around 2012. I documented the culture of the Australian rodeo in the Canberra and surrounding regions. Now, this was just a passion project. I wasn't getting paid to do it. It was just time spent on weekends going around the rodeo circuit and just taking really awesome action shots, getting in amongst the dust, getting right on the fence line where those horses are bucking and those bulls are bucking and those those cowboys are flying off the back of the beast. It was really fun for me to photograph this type of thing, considering I don't really like sport and I really hate sports photography. This was a unique one for me, but the images turned out so dynamic that people were saying to me, wow, these are great, Grace. What are you going to do with them? And one person in particular suggested I put them in an exhibition. So I collected the top 16. I had an anchor image, so my favorite one, the one that was the best. And then I just made sure that the rest of the series were as good as that anchor image. And I had a really successful first solo exhibition. Another one I did, which I already mentioned, was the photograms. That went in an exhibition in Sydney, and I joined with another Canberra photographer. And my theme was flowers, and he did a botanical series as well. So we put our show together, we split the cost, and we exhibited that at the Gaffer Gallery in the centre of Sydney. And I mentioned the 52 portraits that basically helped me build my portfolio. I didn't do anything really serious with that work because it just was what it was. Not all of them were awesome, so that's fine. But one personal project that basically launched me as an artist was titled Horse. And this series and body of work was so different for me because it finally tapped into the work that came from my heart and came connected from my personal story. It wasn't just, pretty pictures or exploration or, this or that. It was work that was really personally connected. So that started with photographing horses in an urban setting. And I tested out the idea with my father's horses. I didn't know what they were going to look like. I didn't know how I was going to manage posing a horse, having it stand still, moving it around with the lights. Did I need help with the lighting equipment? Yes, I invited friends, not photographer friends, mind you, just my gorgeous, beautiful friends who had some time on their hands on a weekend. And, I just paid for their petrol or bought them lunch or whatever. And they came and they just moved the lighting equipment around while I photographed horses. And this personal project took close to a year to finalize. And it ended up in an exhibition in Canberra. Now, one of the questions I get asked about with that series is, where did I find all the horses? Well, as I said, I started with my father's, and once I tested out the concept and I knew how to make it work, I invited my friends who had horses because we owned a horse riding school for 20 years in Canberra. So I had a lot of contacts. But when I was looking for very specific colors and breeds of horses, I turned to Facebook and just put a call out for models to be part of this series. In the beginning, I didn't pay people. I just gave them a enlarged print in return and a bottle of wine and some gorgeous handmade chocolates. So that's sort of how I did it. And people were really flattered to have their horse as part of my exhibition. And the opening night was massive. It was so good. I sold everything in the gallery, not on the opening night, but within the 3-week show. And I sold everything plus more, actually. So the sales totaled $14,500 from that exhibition. And I can't believe it, but yeah, that's really something I can look back on and be really proud of, because the work was personal. It was hard to make. It was challenging. I wanted to give up with that personal project many times because I had challenges working with complete strangers and their horses, and how they sort of, how do I put this lightly? How they trained their horse didn't make it easy for me to get the photographs I needed. Whereas when I worked with my father's horses, my father has been a horse trainer all his life. And when he tells his horses to stand still, they obey him. So anyway, it was all good fun. And I'm really grateful for all the participants, you know, just giving up their time and their horse for my project. So on top of the success of that exhibition, what also came about from that project was invitation to a specific horse exhibition up in the Logan Gallery in Queensland. It was dedicated to, it was called the Pony Show. So it was dedicated to the love of horses in the Australian culture. So I personally got invited to that show and participate with some of my portraits. It also turned into a Canberra Tedx talk. Yes, I have been on the Big Red Circle, but the way that came about was somebody came to the exhibition. I was just naturally talking about the work and how the project got started and my passion for horses and my backstory, how it's connected to my father and all the things about, you know, photographing them. She was so intrigued, and she happened to be the licensee of Tedx Canberra. So she invited me, not on the spot, but through email, to give a TED talk to share my process and share the work on the big screen. It also turned into some publications, printed publications it featured in, many magazines. We had radio interviews as well throughout Canberra, and sign-ups to galleries. I was part of the other art fair. So many opportunities came from putting this personal work out there and sharing it with the world. And because it was so personal, it meant a lot to me that this work is attached to my name. I'm continually proud of it. It will continue to grow. I even just started a new series over the last 2 years. The first image of that was a finalist in the Head-On Photo Festival and got to travel to Pingyao in China. So it's created multiple amazing opportunities. So if that doesn't inspire you to start a personal project, then I don't know what I can do for you, my friends. So that gives you an idea of how a personal project can turn into something bigger. After that horse series, I developed a second and a third and fourth series after that. One of them was the collaboration with the florist, where we did horse portraits on a plain coloured background wearing the handmade headpiece. Another one was Spotted series, and that was exhibited at the QT Hotel in Canberra, and then another gallery as well. And at the moment, they are all just now uploaded to online galleries, and they just sell in the background. So they were made as limited edition prints, and I haven't sold out any of the editions yet, so they continue to sell. If you have any questions about my personal projects, please ask me. Send me a DM over on Instagram. But from here on, if you've got an idea that you've been sitting on for ages and you really want to execute it, but you haven't done it yet, I'm going to set you a challenge, my friends. I want you to execute your idea by December 2023. If you feel like it, you can send me a DM and share your idea with me. We can brainstorm, your concept, but that's your deadline. Please make it happen. No more procrastinating. Implement all the logistics you need to make this happen. Also, don't be scared that when you go to start your personal project, you might need to just do a few test shots at first. You may not get the perfect image right at the beginning, like I didn't with the horses. I had to practice and see how it was going to look and how I was going to develop a complete series with that idea. Start building out your concept. You can do that by writing about it. If you're stuck for ideas, have a think about something that you're passionate about, something that's a personal story to you. How about something that you want to say about a social issue? Are you really passionate about what's happening in the environment right now? Are you passionate about the war on waste? Build a concept around that. Are you angry about something? Build a series around that. There are so many possibilities. They're just, throwing things out there off the top of my head, but just dig deep, see what you can come up with. If you've got nothing right at the minute, don't stress. Now that we've had this conversation, some ideas might have been sparked, and, just sleep on it and see how you go. But for me, personal projects are so important to help develop my creativity. It helps develop my thoughts. It gets my thoughts and ideas out of my head and onto the paper, and it builds my confidence as a creative photographer. It also builds my reputation as an artist. It helps me make my name as an artist by selling more and more work. So there's so many benefits, and I hope I've inspired you today to get started on your next personal project. That's it for today's episode, my friend. Don't forget about the challenge. Hit me up on Instagram. Send me a DM if you've got an idea you want to share with me. I think when you verbalize your idea, it's the next step to making it come to life. That's what I've experienced anyway. So have fun with it, my friends. You can get in touch with me if you want to see any of my personal projects. You won't see them on my website because it's not the type of work I'm trying to attract, but you will see my horse series on my website under the art gallery page. So there you go. Enjoy, my friends, and until next time, I will catch you later. That's it for today's episode. If you found it valuable, I invite you to leave a review so more people can find this podcast, or simply subscribe to be notified when each new episode drops. Until next time, see you later.